The emergency lights of Denver
I've never
International
seen a storm like it.
cut through
Hold
the
on tight.
pre-dawn darkness at 2:17 a.m., painting wet tarmac in alternating reds and whites that looked like blood mixing with snow. Ethan Walker stood in the maintenance hangar, grease under his fingernails, staring at the medical transport plane that had just declared an emergency landing. The pilot stumbled down the stairs, and even from 30 feet away, Ethan could smell the bourbon rolling off him like cologne. "Jesus Christ, Mike," Ethan muttered, watching his colleague grip the railing with both hands, swaying like a tree in a hurricane. Not tonight, not on a medical flight. The patient visible through the cabin windows was a 6-year-old girl, tubes and wires creating a web between her tiny body and machines that beeped with increasing urgency. Her mother pressed against the window, tears streaming down her face as paramedics argued with the drunk pilot about who had authority over the aircraft. "We need another pilot now," the lead paramedic shouted across the hangar. "This kid needs to be in Denver Children's Hospital in the next 40 minutes or she's not going to make it." Ethan's hands started shaking. 5 years. 5 years since he'd sat in a cockpit. 5 years since the night Sarah died, because he'd chosen to fly through a storm instead of diverting, confident in skills that had served him through 2 tours in Afghanistan, but failed him when it mattered most. The medical transport's engines were still running, burning fuel while the child's life ticked away in minutes that nobody could afford to lose. "Anyone here current on a King Air?" The paramedic's voice cracked with desperation. "Anyone?" Ethan's aviation license was still valid. Technically. He'd kept it updated the way people keep photographs of dead relatives, unable to throw them away, but unable to look at them either. His fingers found the worn metal of his wedding ring, now worn on a chain around his neck, hidden beneath layers of work clothes that smelled like jet fuel and regret. 20 minutes to Denver Children's," he heard himself say, stepping forward. "I can get you there in 18. The paramedic turned, hope flickering in exhausted eyes. "You're rated?" "Former Air Force, F-16s mostly, but I've got 300 hours in King Airs." The words tasted like ash, memories of Sarah's last flight mixing with the immediate crisis. She'd been 8 months pregnant, flying back from her mother's funeral when the storm hit. If he'd just waited, if he'd just chosen safety over schedule. "Then let's go." The paramedic was already running back to the plane. Ethan climbed into the captain's seat, muscle memory taking over, despite the scream in his head telling him to run. The controls felt alien and familiar simultaneously, like shaking hands with someone you'd once loved but hadn't seen in years. Through the cabin door, he could hear the little girl's mother praying in Spanish, the same prayer Sarah used to whisper during turbulence. "Tower, this is Medical Transport 779 requesting immediate departure, runway 34 left. Priority clearance to Denver Children's Hospital helipad. Medical 779, you're cleared immediate departure, wind 270 at 15, gusting to 25. Weather moving in from the mountains, Godspeed. Weather from the mountains, just like 5 years ago." Ethan's hand hesitated on the throttle, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the cold Colorado morning. Behind him, monitors beeped faster, the little girl's heart struggling to maintain rhythm. "She's crashing," the paramedic yelled. "We need to move now!" Ethan pushed the throttles forward, feeling the aircraft surge to life beneath him. The rain had started, fat drops exploding against the windscreen like memories he couldn't outrun. As they lifted off, Denver spread below them in a carpet of lights that looked like stars that had fallen to earth and shattered. Somewhere down there, his own 8-year-old daughter Emma was sleeping, unaware that her father was flying again, breaking the promise he'd made at her mother's graveside to never risk leaving her alone. The turbulence hit at 3,000 feet, the aircraft bucking like it was trying to throw them back to Earth. Ethan's hands moved with precision, born from thousands of hours and refined by loss, finding the smooth air between storm cells, threading the needle between safety and speed. The little girl in the cabin was running out of time, but time was all Ethan had been running from for 5 years. 16 minutes later, the helicopter pad lights of Denver Children's Hospital appeared through the rain like a promise. As Ethan set the aircraft down with the gentleness of someone placing a sleeping child in bed, he heard the mother crying with relief, heard the paramedics calling out vitals that suggested they'd made it just in time. He sat in the cockpit after everyone had rushed the girl inside, hands still gripping controls he'd sworn never to touch again. The rain drummed against aluminum skin, and for the first time in 5 years, Ethan Walker had flown. Not away from something, but toward it. Toward the possibility that skills forged in loss could still serve life. That a single dad who'd lost everything in the sky could still find something worth saving in it. The alarm clock in Ethan Walker's bedroom had been broken for 3 months, but it didn't matter. He'd been waking up at 5:47 a.m. every day for the past 5 years, exactly 3 minutes before Sarah used to kiss him goodbye for her morning runs. The apartment near Denver International was small enough that he could hear Emma breathing in the next room, the slight wheeze that came with Colorado's dry air, and her stubborn refusal to use the humidifier because it sounded like a monster. He stood in the narrow kitchen, making coffee in the same chipped mug Emma had painted at a grief counseling craft session when she was 4. It read, "World's Okayest Dad," in uneven purple letters, her attempt at greatest derailed by spelling and spatial awareness. The refrigerator hummed its familiar broken song, filled with frozen pizzas, juice boxes, and a vegetable drawer that contained a single wrinkled apple he kept meaning to throw away, but somehow never did. "Daddy?" Emma stood in the doorway, her mother's eyes set in a face that was becoming more her own each day. She clutched Mr. Buttons, a stuffed rabbit so loved that his original color was a matter of family debate. "You were flying again last night." It wasn't a question. Emma had developed a supernatural ability to know when he'd been in the cockpit, like she could smell the altitude on him. "Just helping someone, sweetheart, a little girl who was sick." "Younger than me?" "Yes." "Is she okay now?" "I think so." Emma nodded solemnly, then padded over to the kitchen table where her homework lay scattered like evidence of a life lived between responsibilities. Math problems mixed with a half-finished drawing of their family. 3 figures, always 3, even though it had been just 2 for more than half her life. "Mrs. Chen says I draw Mommy too much," Emma said, adding clouds around the figure with wings she always included. "She says it's not healthy." Ethan's jaw tightened. Mrs. Chen, the school counselor, meant well, but didn't understand that grief in children wasn't something to be fixed, just witnessed and held. "You draw whatever you need to draw, Em." "She's getting harder to remember," Emma whispered, and the words hit Ethan like decompression at altitude. "Sometimes I forget what her laugh sounded like." He pulled his daughter close, smelling the Johnson's baby shampoo she insisted on using because that's what Mommy used to wash her hair with. "Want to watch the video?" They kept one video, just one, on his phone. Sarah, 8 months pregnant, laughing as Emma kicked inside her, making her belly move like something from a science fiction movie. They'd watched it so many times the phone warned them about storage space, but neither could bring themselves to move it to the cloud. It needed to stay close, accessible, real. After school, Emma decided, we can watch it after school. The morning routine unfolded with practiced efficiency. Shower negotiations, the daily battle over wearing the same unicorn shirt 3 days in a row, breakfast that consisted of cereal. Emma ate dry because milk was for babies, apparently. Ethan packed her lunch. Peanut butter sandwich cut in triangles, not squares. Apple slices he knew she'd trade for cookies. A note he'd been writing every day since kindergarten that just said, "Love you to the moon and back," with a small drawing of an airplane. "Ashley's mom is taking us to gymnastics today," Emma announced, shoving folders into her backpack with the organizational skills of a tornado. "She says you can pay her back later." Another debt to track. Ashley's mom, Jennifer, had been carrying them for months, pretending it was no trouble while Ethan worked nights and weekends to keep their heads above water. The medical bills from Sarah's last flight had taken everything. The house, the savings, the future they'd planned during late-night conversations about whether Emma would be a pilot like Daddy or a teacher like Mommy. The walk to school took 12 minutes, their shadows long in the morning sun. Emma held his hand for the first block, then let go when other kids might see, then grabbed it again at the crosswalk because some traditions were bigger than embarrassment. "Tommy Brennan says only losers have dead moms," Emma said conversationally, like she was discussing the weather. "Tommy Brennan's parents are getting divorced and he's angry at the world," Ethan replied, proud of himself for not adding what he thought about Tommy Brennan's father, who drove a Tesla and complained about child support at the bar Ethan had stopped going to. I know. I told him at least my mom loved me enough to die. His mom just loved his dad's secretary more. Emma? What? It's true. I heard Brennan telling the principal. The school appeared ahead, a collection of beige buildings that looked like they'd been designed by someone who believed children were allergic to color. Parents clustered at the gate, the usual divisions clear as high school cafeteria tables. Working moms in their pre-meeting armor, stay-at-home moms in yoga pants that cost more than Ethan's weekly groceries, and the single parents looking slightly stunned at another successful morning navigation. There's Ashley! Emma started to run, then stopped, turned back. Daddy, are you going to fly again tonight? I don't know, Em. I hope you do. Mommy loved when you flew. She said you looked most yourself in the sky. She was gone before he could respond, disappearing into a cluster of 8-year-olds discussing something that required extensive hand gestures and dramatic gasps. Ethan stood at the gate longer than necessary, watching her navigate the complex social dynamics of 3rd grade with more grace than he managed with adults. His phone buzzed, Lloyd from the hangar, asking if he could take an extra shift. One of the mechanics had called in sick, which was Lloyd speak for showed up drunk. Ethan texted back yes, because yes was the only answer when you were a single dad with a daughter who needed gymnastics lessons and new shoes and therapy he couldn't afford, but couldn't afford to skip. The walk back to the apartment felt longer without Emma's chatter filling the space. He passed the coffee shop where Sarah used to write lesson plans, the park where they'd told Emma about the baby that would have been her sister, the bus stop where he'd gotten the call about the crash. 5 years. Some days it felt like yesterday. Some days it felt like another lifetime. Every day it felt like carrying weight that never got lighter, just more familiar. Back in the apartment, he stood in what had been Sarah's office, now his workspace where he studied maintenance manuals and filled out job applications for positions that paid enough to maybe get Emma into the school district she deserved. The walls still held her teaching certificates, her graduation photos from University of Colorado, the ultrasound of the baby they'd planned to name Grace. On the desk, amid the bills marked past due in red letters that seemed to get larger each month, sat a folder from a law firm. Wrongful death settlement, they called it, as if death could ever be made right with money. The airline's insurance wanted to close the case, move on, reduce Sarah and Grace to a number on a spreadsheet. Ethan hadn't opened it, couldn't make himself reduce them to dollars and cents. His phone rang. The hospital. Mr. Walker? This is Dr. Martinez at Denver Children's. I wanted to thank you personally. The little girl you flew in last night, Sophia, she's stable. She's going to make it. That's good to hear. Her mother would like to thank you. She doesn't speak much English, but she wanted me to tell you that you're an answer to prayers she didn't know how to pray. After the call, Ethan sat in the silence of the apartment, surrounded by the debris of a life lived in the spaces between what was and what should have been. Tonight he'd pick up Emma, help with homework he sometimes didn't understand, make dinner that would definitely include vegetables she wouldn't eat, read a chapter of whatever book they were working through, and tuck her in with the same song Sarah used to sing. And maybe, if the dreams were kind, he'd sleep without seeing Sarah's plane disappearing into the storm, without hearing the last radio transmission, without waking up at 5:47 a.m. to a world that kept spinning, despite having a hole the shape of her smile. But first, he had 8 hours of work, replacing parts on aircraft that other people would trust with their lives, making sure that the bolts were tight and the connections were solid and that nobody else would learn what it meant to lose everything at 30,000 feet. The single dad's life wasn't the one he'd planned, but it was the one he was living, one day, one flight, one bedtime story at a time. The Tuesday afternoon flight from Phoenix to Denver was supposed to be empty. October meant off-season, which meant Ethan could afford the staff buddy pass to visit his brother. But he'd canceled last minute when Emma woke up with a fever, and now he stood in the United Maintenance hangar, troubleshooting a hydraulic leak on the very plane he should have been riding. "We got a divert coming in," Lloyd called across the hangar. "Medical emergency on board. Needs to be on the ground in 15. Ethan looked up from the hydraulic line, watching the approaching aircraft through the hangar's massive doors. It was coming in too fast, the descent angle aggressive enough to make his chest tighten with recognition. That wasn't a medical emergency approach. That was someone running from something. The 737 touched down hard, thrust reversers screaming, and taxied directly to the hangar instead of a gate. Through the cockpit window, Ethan could see the pilot's face, tight with the kind of stress that had nothing to do with flying and everything to do with whatever was happening in the cabin behind him. The forward door opened before the stairs were fully positioned. A woman emerged first, late 20s, Asian features sharp with intelligence and something else, something Ethan recognized from his military days. The hypervigilance of someone who'd learned that danger doesn't announce itself. She wore designer jeans and a Northwestern University hoodie, looking like any other passenger except for the way she scanned the hangar, cataloging exits, counting personnel, measuring distances. Her carry-on bag was held close, not casual, and when Lloyd approached with the standard deplaning pleasantries, she stepped back instead of forward. "Ma'am, we need to clear the aircraft," Lloyd said. "There's a passenger having a cardiac event in row 12, she said, her voice carrying the faint trace of a Chicago accent overlaid with medical precision. Male, approximately 60, showing signs of ventricular tachycardia. The flight attendants have an AED, but no one knows how to read the rhythm strip." She was already moving back up the stairs before Lloyd could respond. Ethan found himself following, drawn by the contradiction between her medical knowledge and her obvious desire to remain unnoticed. Inside the cabin, chaos had taken hold in that particular way that medical emergencies create. Clustered passengers, crying children, flight attendants trying to maintain order while fighting their own panic. The woman moved through it like water through rocks, efficient and inevitable. "Everyone needs to step back," she said, her voice cutting through the noise with unexpected authority. "He needs air, not an audience." She knelt beside the fallen passenger, her fingers finding his carotid pulse while her other hand checked pupil response. The transformation was immediate and complete, from fleeing passenger to medical professional in the space between heartbeats. "How long has he been down?" she asked the nearest flight attendant. "Maybe 3 minutes, 4? Get me the AED, now." She was already positioning the man, tilting his head back with practiced ease. "And I need any medication on board. Aspirin, nitroglycerin if you have it." "Are you a doctor?" the flight attendant asked. The woman hesitated just for a second, but Ethan caught it. "Something like that." She worked with an efficiency that spoke of emergency rooms and trauma bays, of decisions made when seconds mattered and mistakes meant death. The AED pads went on precisely, her interpretation of the rhythm strip immediate and accurate. "He's in V-touch," she announced. "Everyone stay clear." The shock. The endless moment of waiting. Then, a heartbeat, regular and strong on the monitor. "We need to get him to a hospital," she said, sitting back on her heels. "He's stable for now, but he needs a cath lab within the hour." Paramedics arrived, taking over with the deference given to someone who'd clearly saved a life. The woman stepped back, melting into the crowd of passengers now deplaning, but Ethan noticed how her hands shook slightly, how she kept touching her bag like it contained something precious or dangerous. She was halfway across the hangar when the police arrived, not airport security. Actual Denver PD, badges out, hands resting on weapons with the casual readiness of people expecting trouble. "Sophie Chen?" The lead detective's voice carried across the space. The woman, Sophie, stopped but didn't turn. Ethan saw her shoulders rise and fall, with a breath that looked like resignation. "We need you to come with us, Dr. Chen." Doctor? So she was a physician, but physicians didn't usually rate a police escort unless something had gone very wrong. "Am I under arrest?" Sophie asked, turning finally. In the harsh hangar lighting, Ethan could see exhaustion painted in the circles under her eyes, the kind that came from running too long from something that kept getting closer. "Not unless you make us. But the FBI would like a word about what happened in Chicago." FBI. The word rippled through the hangar staff like electricity. Lloyd stepped back. Other workers found reasons to be elsewhere, but Ethan stayed, watching as Sophie's fingers tightened on her bag. "I saved a man's life," she said quietly. "Isn't that enough for one day? Dr. Chen, please don't make this difficult." She looked around the hangar, her gaze stopping on Ethan for a moment. He saw calculation in her eyes, measuring him against some internal criteria. "I need to make a call first," she said. "You can call from the station. I have a patient, in witness protection. If I don't check in every 12 hours, they'll assume I'm compromised. You want that on your conscience, Detective? Morrison, and that sounds like someone else's problem. Sophie laughed, bitter and short. Right. Someone else's problem. That's what everyone said in Chicago, too, right before 3 people ended up dead. The detective's hand moved to his weapon. Is that a threat? It's a fact. I testified against the Torino family's organ trafficking ring. 3 witnesses are already dead. I'm number 4 on their list. So excuse me if I don't feel particularly safe in your custody. Organ trafficking. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Ethan thought of Emma, of the vulnerability of small bodies in a world where people could be reduced to parts. Wait, Ethan heard himself say. Everyone turned to look at him. Maintenance worker in grease-stained coveralls. Nobody important. She just saved a man's life. Whatever's happening, she stopped to save someone. Doesn't that count for something? Detective Morrison's expression suggested it didn't. Sir, this doesn't concern you. Maybe not, Ethan continued, surprising himself with his persistence. But I've got a daughter, 8 years old, and if someone was harvesting organs from kids, I'd want the person brave enough to testify to be protected, not dragged through airports like a criminal. Sophie looked at him again, longer this time. You have a daughter? Emma. She's 8. Something shifted in Sophie's expression. I had a patient named Emma, 7 years old, needed a kidney. Her parents were told they could buy one for $50,000, black market. They were desperate enough to consider it. She turned back to the detective. I reported it. That's how this all started. A 7-year-old named Emma who just wanted to live to see 8. The detective's grip on his weapon loosened slightly. Dr. Chen, we're trying to protect you. No, you're trying to control me. There's a difference. She pulled out her phone, showed him something on the screen. This is a text I got this morning. Picture of my apartment in Chicago, the one that's supposed to be under surveillance. Someone was inside. So, forgive me if I don't trust your protection. Ethan stepped closer, close enough to see the photo on her phone. A bedroom, neat and impersonal, except for the organ cooler placed precisely on the bed, the kind used for transplants. The threat was clear. Jesus, Morrison muttered. Yeah, so maybe instead of dragging me to a station where they clearly know to find me, we could discuss alternatives. What kind of alternatives? Sophie's eyes found Ethan again. Somewhere off the grid. Somewhere no one would think to look for a Northwestern-trained emergency physician. Morrison shook his head. We can't just let you disappear. I'm not disappearing. I'm surviving. There's a difference. She shouldered her bag. Give me 72 hours. Let me find somewhere safe. I'll check in every 12 hours. I can't authorize that. Then call someone who can, because in about 30 seconds I'm walking out of here, and you can either shoot me in front of all these witnesses or explain to your supervisors why their star witness against a major organ trafficking ring disappeared because you couldn't think outside your protocol. The standoff stretched, tension thick enough to taste. Ethan found himself stepping between them, not sure why, just knowing that something about this woman, her exhaustion, her defiance, her willingness to save lives even while running for her own, reminded him of Sarah's fierce protection of her students. She could stay with me, he said, the words out before he could think them through. I mean, temporarily. I've got a couch. No one would look for her in a maintenance worker's apartment. Both Sophie and Morrison stared at him. You don't even know me, Sophie said. You saved a man's life instead of running. That tells me enough. This is insane, Morrison said. Maybe, Ethan agreed, but it's also unexpected. And isn't that what she needs? Somewhere unexpected? Sophie studied him, and he could see her cataloging details. The wedding ring on the chain visible at his collar, the photo of Emma tucked in his shirt pocket, the steadiness of someone who'd faced down worse than police standoffs. What's your name? She asked. Ethan Walker. Why would you do this? He thought of Emma asking why her drawings of Mommy had wings, of Sarah's belief that strangers were just friends waiting to be discovered, of the little girl named Emma in Chicago who needed a kidney and got Sophie's conscience instead. Because someone should, he said simply. Morrison's phone rang. He answered, listened, his expression darkening with each word. When he hung up, his face had the careful blankness of someone processing bad news. There's been another incident in Chicago, he said quietly. Another witness, Dr. Chen, I'm sorry, but Marcus Rodriguez was found this morning. Sophie's legs gave out. Ethan caught her before she hit the hangar floor, feeling the tremors running through her body like electrical current. Marcus was careful, she whispered. He was so careful. We need to get you somewhere safe, Morrison said, urgency replacing protocol. Mr. Walker, your offer. Is it genuine? Ethan thought of Emma, of bringing danger into their small, safe world. Then he thought of Sarah, who would have opened their door without hesitation, who believed in doing the right thing, especially when it was the hard thing. Yes, he said. And just like that, a stranger entered their lives, carrying secrets that would either destroy them or show them that sometimes family isn't about blood, but about the choices we make when the world demands we choose between safety and humanity. Sophie looked up at him, this maintenance worker offering sanctuary, and managed a smile that was equal parts gratitude and warning. You have no idea what you're signing up for, she said. Probably not, Ethan agreed, helping her stand. But then again, the best things in life usually come with unclear instructions and assembly required. The drive to Ethan's apartment took 17 minutes in Morrison's unmarked car, with Sophie in the back seat clutching her bag like a life preserver. Ethan followed in his truck, watching through the rearview mirror as two other unmarked vehicles maintained careful distance. FBI, probably, or maybe the people hunting Sophie. In this situation, it was hard to tell which was which. This is temporary, Morrison said for the third time as they pulled into the apartment complex parking lot. 48 hours maximum while we arrange proper witness protection. You said that about Chicago Safe House too, Sophie replied, her voice hollow. Marcus believed you. The apartment building looked even shabbier in the afternoon light. 3 stories of faded brick and windows that didn't quite close properly. Ethan found himself seeing it through Sophie's eyes. The broken security door, the flickering hallway lights, the sounds of lives lived too close together, bleeding through thin walls. It's not much, he said, unlocking his door. But it's safe. Nobody notices anybody here. Sophie stepped inside, her trained eye cataloging everything in seconds. The emergency exits, the sight lines from windows, the places someone could hide. Then her gaze softened, taking in the lived-in chaos of a single father's life. Emma's artwork covered every available surface. A gallery of stick figures and rainbow skies, and 3-person families that told a story of loss and persistence. Your daughter's an artist, Sophie said, stopping at a particularly elaborate crayon drawing of a dragon wearing a tutu. She's going through a phase where everything needs to be both fierce and fancy. Smart girl, the world needs more fierce and fancy. Morrison checked the windows, tested the locks, his expression growing increasingly skeptical. This isn't secure, Dr. Chen. It's unexpected, Sophie countered, setting her bag carefully on the couch. That's better than secure. Secure is where they look first. I'll have units patrol every 2 hours. No. Sophie's voice was firm. Patrol cars mean patterns. Patterns mean predictability. Just let me disappear for a few days. After Morrison left, with promises of hourly check-ins and vague threats about what would happen if Sophie ran, the apartment fell into awkward silence. Ethan busied himself clearing Emma's breakfast dishes while Sophie stood by the window, watching the parking lot, with the intensity of someone who'd learned that danger often arrived in ordinary cars driven by ordinary-looking people. You should know, she said without turning. Everyone who helps me becomes a target. That's not hyperbole. That's just fact. Everyone who doesn't help becomes complicit, Ethan replied, surprising himself with the philosophy. That's what my wife used to say. Used to? She died 5 years ago. Sophie turned from the window, studying him with doctor's eyes. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. He gestured at the coffee maker. Want some? It's terrible, but it's caffeinated. Terrible and caffeinated sounds perfect. They sat at the small kitchen table, 2 strangers brought together by circumstance, drinking bad coffee while autumn light slanted through windows that needed cleaning. Sophie's hands wrapped around the mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. The little girl, Ethan said finally. Emma, the one in Chicago. Did she get her kidney? A smile ghosted across Sophie's face. She did. Anonymous donor came forward after the story broke. She's 10 now, plays soccer. You kept track? I keep track of all of them. The ones I save, the ones I lose, the ones still waiting. It's a doctor's blessing and curse. We remember everyone. Military's the same, Ethan said. You carry them all with you. You served? Air Force. 12 years. F-16s mostly. Sophie's eyes sharpened with interest. Fighter pilot turned aircraft mechanic? That's quite a career change. Life has a way of changing your flight path. Before Sophie could respond, the apartment door burst open. Emma stood there, backpack dragging, eyes bright with the drama of third grade. Daddy, Ashley threw up in art class, and it was green and... Oh. She stopped, noticing Sophie. Who are you? Emma, this is Dr. Chen. She's staying with us for a few days. Emma's eyes widened. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? Emma. What? Jennifer's mom said you needed one. She said you were very available. Sophie laughed, the first genuine sound of joy since she'd arrived. I'm just a friend who needs a place to stay, but you can call me Sophie. Emma approached with the fearless curiosity of 8-year-olds, studying Sophie with the same intensity Sophie had studied the apartment. You look tired, Emma announced. And scared. Are you scared? Emma, that's not polite. It's okay, Sophie interrupted. Yes, I'm scared. Sometimes adults get scared too. I get scared, Emma said, climbing onto a kitchen chair. Mostly at night, Daddy says it's okay to be scared, as long as you don't let it be the boss of you. Your daddy sounds smart. He is. He can fly planes and fix them and make pancakes that look like butterflies. Emma paused. Can you make pancakes? I can make really good scrambled eggs. Eggs for dinner? Emma's expression suggested this was either brilliant or blasphemous. Best eggs you've ever had, Sophie promised, if your dad says it's okay. Ethan watched this stranger who'd been running for her life, an hour ago now negotiating dinner plans with his daughter, and felt something shift in his chest. Not attraction, it was too soon, too complicated for that, but recognition. The recognition of someone else carrying weight they hadn't chosen, making the best of circumstances they couldn't control. Eggs sound good, he said. Sophie moved around their small kitchen with the efficiency of someone used to working in confined spaces. She found ingredients Ethan hadn't even remembered buying, transforming their meager supplies into something that smelled like hope and possibility. Emma sat at the counter, peppering Sophie with questions that would have been invasive from an adult, but seemed perfectly reasonable from a third grader. Are you married? No. Do you have kids? Not yet. Why not? Complicated. Do you like unicorns? Absolutely. Do you think Daddy's handsome? Emma! Sophie glanced at Ethan, who was trying to disappear into the refrigerator. I think your daddy's kind. That's better than handsome. Jennifer's mom says he's very handsome. She says it a lot. Okay, Ethan interrupted. Who wants to set the table? They ate scrambled eggs that were, as promised, the best they'd ever had. Sophie had added cream cheese and chives she'd found in the back of the fridge, transforming ordinary eggs into something that made Emma declare Sophie a kitchen wizard. The conversation flowed with surprising ease. Emma's school drama, Sophie's carefully edited stories from the hospital, Ethan's tales of aircraft mishaps that made his daughter giggle. For an hour, they weren't a witness in hiding, a grieving widower and a motherless child. They were just three people sharing a meal, and if you didn't look too close, you might mistake them for something they weren't, something they couldn't be, something that none of them were ready to name, but all of them felt, the possibility of connection in the midst of chaos. Can Sophie read my bedtime story? Emma asked as dishes were cleared. Sophie's tired, Em. I'd love to, Sophie said, and Ethan saw in her eyes the need to do something normal. Something that wasn't about running or hiding or staying alive. They sat on Emma's bed, Sophie reading Charlotte's Web, with different voices for each character, while Emma provided commentary on the likelihood of talking spiders and the ethics of eating bacon if pigs could be that smart. Ethan watched from the doorway, seeing how naturally Sophie fit into their routine, how Emma leaned against her like she'd known her for years instead of hours. You know, Emma said as Sophie tucked her in, Mommy would have liked you. Why do you think that? Because you're not trying to replace her. Jennifer's mom tries to replace her. She brings casseroles and wears perfume and laughs too loud at Daddy's jokes that aren't even funny. Hey, Ethan protested mildly. It's true, Daddy. Your jokes are terrible. Sophie smiled, smoothing Emma's hair. What was your mommy like? She was a teacher. She made up songs about everything. Brushing teeth, putting on shoes, cleaning up toys. She couldn't cook at all. Daddy did all the cooking. But she could make you feel better just by hugging you. She gave magical hugs. She sounds wonderful. She was. Emma's eyes grew heavy. Sophie, are you going to disappear? The question hung in the air like a held breath. Sophie looked at Ethan, then back at Emma. I don't know, she said honestly. But I promise, whatever happens, I won't disappear without saying goodbye. Pinky promise? Sophie linked pinkies with the 8-year-old, the gesture somehow more binding than any legal document. Pinky promise. As Emma drifted off to sleep, Sophie and Ethan returned to the living room. The apartment felt smaller in the darkness, more intimate. Sophie had curled into the corner of the couch, looking younger and more vulnerable than she had all day. Thank you, she said quietly. For this. For her. For normal. Everyone deserves normal. Not everyone gets it. She pulled her knees to her chest. The Torinos have people everywhere. Cops, FBI, hospitals. They buy people like groceries. Marcus thought he was safe, and they found him in witness protection. What did you see, Sophie? What makes you so dangerous to them? She was quiet for so long, Ethan thought she wouldn't answer. Then, barely above a whisper, I saw them kill a 14-year-old boy. They took his organs while he was still alive. Said the preservation was better that way. I was supposed to be harvesting the organs for transplant, but I couldn't. I recorded everything instead. Video, audio, the whole thing. That's what they want, the recordings. And me dead, so I can't testify. The weight of her words settled over the apartment like ash from a distant fire. Ethan thought of Emma, sleeping peacefully in the next room, of the world of monsters that existed just outside their door. We'll keep you safe, he said, not sure how he could make that promise, but meaning it anyway. Sophie looked at him. This stranger who'd opened his home and his life to her danger. Why are you doing this? Really? Because, Ethan said, thinking of Sarah's faith in human goodness, of Emma's innocent trust, of his own need to be something more than just a man running from his past. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the dangerous thing to do. And maybe I'm tired of playing it safe. Outside, Denver settled into night, unaware that in a small apartment near the airport, 3 broken people were accidentally forming something that looked almost like a family. It wouldn't last, couldn't last. But for tonight, it was enough. For tonight, they were safe. For tonight, they were together. And sometimes, tonight is all we get. Ors bides. The first 3 days passed in a strange bubble of domestic tranquility that felt both foreign and familiar. Sophie had insisted on contributing, transforming their sparse meals into something approaching actual nutrition, teaching Emma card games that involved enough math to be educational, but enough fun to not feel like homework. She'd even fixed the coffee maker's mysterious grinding noise with a butter knife and what she called emergency room engineering. But on Thursday morning, the bubble began to crack. It started with Jennifer's mom at school pickup. Ethan had forgotten it was his turn for the gymnastics carpool, and Jennifer stood at the gates like a sentry, her perfectly blown-out hair catching the afternoon sun like a shampoo commercial. Ethan, there you are. Her voice carried that particular frequency of forced casualness that meant she'd been waiting. Emma tells me you have a house guest. Just a friend passing through, Ethan said, trying to navigate around her to where Emma was demonstrating cartwheels with more enthusiasm than skill. A female friend? Jennifer's smile could have cut glass. How wonderful. You know, the school has policies about overnight guests when there are children in the home. She's sleeping on the couch, Jennifer. Of course she is. The disbelief in her voice was thick enough to spread on toast. It's just, after everything Emma's been through, we want to make sure she has stability. The "we" in that sentence did a lot of heavy lifting. Jennifer had appointed herself the neighborhood's unofficial guardian of proper single parenting, which seemed to mean criticizing everyone who didn't handle widowhood the way she handled her divorce, with yoga, wine, and aggressive positivity. Emma's fine, Ethan said, but Jennifer had already pulled out her phone, showing him a Facebook post from the school's parent group. Someone saw a police car at your apartment. Multiple police cars, actually. Her concern was performative, but the threat underneath was real. People are talking. People were always talking. It was a gift suburban parents had, turning observation into judgment, into intervention, with the efficiency of a military operation. Emma ran over, backpack bouncing. "Daddy, can Sophie come to my school thing tomorrow?" "What school thing, sweetheart?" "The career day thing. Everyone's bringing someone. Ashley's bringing her mom, who sells makeup, and Tommy's bringing his dad, who does something boring with computers." Jennifer's eyebrows rose. "Oh, is Sophie employed? How nice. What does she do?" Emma, with the innocent brutality of children, said, "She's hiding from bad people who want to hurt her." The silence that followed could have been measured in geological time. "She's a doctor," Ethan said quickly. "Emergency medicine. She's just between positions." "How interesting," Jennifer said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "Well, I should mention that all career day participants need background checks, school policy. I'm sure that won't be a problem for your friend." She walked away, her heels clicking against pavement like a countdown timer. Ethan knew that within an hour, every parent in the school would know about his mysterious house guest, the police visits, and Emma's unfortunate honesty. Back at the apartment, Sophie was on the phone, pacing the small living room like a caged animal. Her side of the conversation was terse, professional, but Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her free hand kept clenching and unclenching. "No, I'm not coming in. Because Marcus came in and now he's dead. I don't care what the U.S. attorney says. Fine, but I choose the location." She hung up and threw the phone onto the couch with enough force to make it bounce. "They want me to testify Monday," she said. "Pre-trial deposition. They say it'll be secure, but they said that about Marcus too." "Where?" "Federal courthouse downtown. They'll have a whole security detail, unmarked cars, the works, which means the Torinos will know exactly where I'll be and when." Emma, who'd been coloring at the kitchen table, looked up. "Can't you just tell them the truth over the phone?" Sophie smiled sadly. "It doesn't work that way, sweetie. They need to see my face, hear my voice in person, make sure I'm real." "That's stupid. You're obviously real. You made us eggs." "The best eggs," Sophie agreed, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. That evening, while Emma was in the bath, Ethan found Sophie standing by the window again, watching the parking lot. It had become her habit, this vigilance, checking and rechecking the ordinary world for signs of danger. "There's been a car," she said quietly. "Blue sedan. It's been there for 2 hours." Ethan looked. Just a normal car in a lot full of normal cars. Could be anyone's. Could be, but she didn't move from the window. "Sophie, you can't live like this. I can't live any other way." She turned to face him, and in the dim light, he could see the exhaustion that went bone deep. "Everyone I've connected with since this started has been hurt. My attending at Northwestern got his tires slashed. My roommate's student loans suddenly came due all at once. And Marcus is dead. You don't know that's connected?" "His organs were removed," Sophie said flatly. "The autopsy showed surgical precision. They took his organs post-mortem, like a calling card, like a message. The horror of it sat between them, heavy and undeniable." "Maybe you should run," Ethan said. "Just disappear, start over somewhere." "With what?" "They've frozen my accounts. My medical license is under review, thanks to some manufactured complaints. I have a bag of clothes and a recording that might put them away, but only if I live long enough to testify." Emma appeared in her pajamas, hair still damp from the bath. "Are you guys sad talking? You look like you're sad talking." "Just grown-up talking," Ethan said. "Same thing?" Emma climbed onto the couch next to Sophie. "Want to see what I'm bringing for show and tell tomorrow?" She produced a photo from her backpack, Sarah, Ethan, and baby Emma at the hospital the day she was born. Everyone looked impossibly young and happy, unaware of what was coming. "That's your mommy?" Sophie asked. "Yeah. Mrs. Peterson says I should bring something else, something more current. But this is my favorite picture." "Why?" "Because everyone's together. That's what matters, right? Being together." Sophie pulled Emma closer, and Ethan saw her blink back tears. "Yeah, sweetheart. That's what matters." Later, after Emma was asleep, Sophie said, I should leave. This isn't fair to either of you. Probably not, Ethan agreed. But Emma's right. Being together matters, even if it's temporary, even if it's dangerous. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you saved a man on that plane when you could have just hidden. I know you're fighting to stop people who harvest organs from children. I know Emma trusts you, and she doesn't trust easily anymore. Ethan, and I know what it's like to be alone with your fear, to carry weight that gets heavier every day. You don't have to carry it alone, at least not this week. Sophie looked at him for a long moment. This man who'd lost everything and still had room to help a stranger. Jennifer's right, you know. I'm a danger to Emma. Jennifer thinks gluten is a danger to Emma. Her risk assessment skills are questionable. That got a small laugh. She likes you. Jennifer likes the idea of fixing me. There's a difference. And you don't need fixing? Ethan thought about it, about the broken parts of himself he'd been carrying for 5 years. Maybe I do, but not by someone who thinks grief has an expiration date, and happiness can be achieved through proper meal planning. They talked until midnight, the conversation meandering through safer topics. Medical school stories, Air Force adventures, Emma's elaborate plans to train a dragon if she ever found one. It was the kind of conversation that happened when two people were trying not to talk about the thing they were both thinking about. That this felt too comfortable, too right, too much like something that could matter if circumstances were different. The next morning brought new complications. The school called about the background check for career day. The blue sedan was gone, but a white van had taken its place. Morrison called to say there had been another incident. Someone had broken into Sophie's Chicago apartment again, this time leaving a child's organ donation card on her pillow. I can't go to Emma's school, Sophie said. It would put everyone at risk. Emma, eating cereal in her unicorn pajamas, looked crushed. But you promised to tell them about being a doctor. I know, sweetie, but everyone else has someone coming. Ashley's mom is doing makeup demonstrations. Tommy's dad is bringing his stupid computer. I wanted to show them you're real. The pain in her voice was sharp enough to cut. Ethan knew that pain, the constant need to prove that your non-traditional family was still valid, still worthy, still real. What if, Sophie said slowly, I did it virtually, video call? That way I could participate without actually being there. Emma considered this. Like you're a hologram? Exactly like a hologram. That's actually cooler than being there in person. And so, they set it up. Ethan's laptop connected to the classroom projector. Sophie dressed professionally from the waist up. Pajama pants carefully out of frame. Talking to second and third graders about emergency medicine, with enough enthusiasm to make them forget she wasn't physically present. Do you save lives every day? One kid asked. Not every day. Some days I just hold hands and listen. That saves lives too, in a different way. Have you ever seen a dead person? Tommy, the teacher admonished, but Sophie smiled. Yes, but I've seen more people come back to life. That's why I became a doctor, to help people come back. She fielded their questions with grace, turning their morbid curiosity into genuine interest. Emma beamed with pride, occasionally adding commentary. Sophie makes the best eggs. She knows card tricks. She's teaching me to take someone's pulse. But halfway through, Sophie suddenly went rigid, staring at something off-screen. The laptop showed her reaching for something. Her phone, probably. Her face draining of color. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I have a medical emergency. Thank you for having me. The screen went black. Ethan was already moving, leaving work without explanation, driving the 12 minutes home in 8. He found Sophie packing frantically, throwing her few belongings into her bag with shaking hands. They found me, she said. Someone sent a photo of me from Emma's classroom. I was in the background of someone's social media post about career day. They know where I am. Sophie, I have to go, now, before they... The knock on the door was soft, almost polite. They both froze. Mr. Walker? A woman's voice, professional, calm. FBI, we need to talk to Dr. Chen. Sophie looked at Ethan, and in her eyes, he saw the same expression Sarah had the day the doctor said terminal. The recognition that sometimes the world changes in a single word, a single moment, a single knock. Whatever happens, Sophie whispered, tell Emma I kept my promise. I said goodbye. She opened the door. So, The woman at the door wasn't what Ethan expected from the FBI. She was young, maybe 30, with tired eyes and a coffee stain on her blazer that suggested she'd been working without sleep. Behind her stood two men in suits that actually fit, their hands resting casually near weapons they were clearly prepared to use. "Dr. Chen," the woman said, "I'm Special Agent Rivera. We've been looking for you." "I've been exactly where I said I'd be," Sophie replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Morrison knew where to find me. Detective Morrison was removed from your case yesterday. He was receiving payments from an offshore account linked to the Torino family." The words landed like physical blows. Sophie stumbled backward, Ethan catching her arm to steady her. Morrison, who'd promised protection, who'd known exactly where she was hiding. "We need to move you immediately," Rivera continued. "We have credible intelligence that a team is en route to this location." "A team," Sophie repeated flatly. "You mean killers?" "I mean, we have about 15 minutes before this gets complicated." Ethan's mind raced through calculations. Emma would be at school for another 3 hours. The apartment held nothing irreplaceable except photographs, and Sophie, standing in his doorway, looked like she was drowning on dry land. "I'll get your things," he told Sophie, but Rivera shook her head. "No time. We leave now." "Wait," Sophie said, pulling out her phone. "I need to show you something first." She opened an encrypted folder, and a video began to play. Ethan caught glimpses over her shoulder. An operating room, figures in surgical masks, a young boy on a table. The audio was crisp, terrifyingly clear. "That's Vincent Torino," Sophie said, pointing to a man directing the procedure. "And that's his son Michael, actually performing the extraction. The boy was supposedly brain dead from a car accident. But look at his vitals monitor." Rivera leaned in, her expression hardening. "He's responsive. They paralyzed him, but kept him conscious. Said the organ stayed fresher that way. The fear response actually improves preservation, they said. Like they were discussing meat, not a child." Ethan felt his stomach turn. In the video, Sophie's voice could be heard protesting, then threatening to call security. "That's when they offered me $2 million to finish the procedure," Sophie said. "When I refused, they said they'd kill me. I kept recording." This is everything we need," Rivera breathed. "With your testimony, my testimony won't mean anything if I'm dead." A car backfired outside, and everyone moved at once. The agents drawing weapons, Sophie dropping to the floor, Ethan instinctively stepping between her and the window. It was nothing, just city noise, but the reaction showed how tight everyone's nerves were wound. "We're moving you to a federal facility in Wyoming," Rivera said. "Completely off the grid. New identity, new everything, until trial." "When's the trial?" 6 weeks. 6 weeks, Sophie repeated. "And then what? Even if they're convicted, the family has reach. They'll never stop hunting me." Rivera's silence was answer enough. "What about them?" Sophie asked, gesturing to Ethan. "They know I was here. Emma goes to school with kids whose parents post everything online. They're in danger now, too. We can offer protective surveillance." "Like you offered Morrison?" Ethan interrupted. "No thanks." Rivera's phone buzzed. She answered, her face going pale. "Understood. 2 minutes." She looked at Sophie with an urgency that made Ethan's military instinct scream danger. "They're here. 3 vehicles converging on this location. We need to go. Now." Sophie grabbed her bag, then stopped, turning to Ethan. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never should have." "Don't apologize for surviving," he said. "Just keep doing it." She kissed him then, quick and desperate, tasting of fear and possibility and goodbye. "Tell Emma. I'll tell her you kept your promise." Rivera was already pulling Sophie toward the door when the first window shattered. The sound of breaking glass was followed immediately by smoke grenades, filling the apartment with thick, choking clouds. Ethan heard Rivera shouting coordinates into her radio, heard car doors slamming outside, heard the distinctive sound of automatic weapons being chambered. "Back door!" one of the agents yelled. "Move! Move!" They stumbled through the smoke, Ethan's knowledge of his own apartment, the only thing keeping them from crashing into walls. The back stairwell was narrow, meant for emergencies, which this absolutely qualified as. They could hear boots on the main stairs, voices shouting in what sounded like Russian or Albanian. "My car's in the alley," Rivera said, but when they burst out the back door, Her SUV was already blocked by a black van. "This way," Ethan said, pulling them toward the maintenance shed where he kept tools for the apartment complex. Behind it was a drainage culvert that led to the next street. He'd discovered it chasing Emma's escaped hamster last year, never imagining it would become an escape route. They crawled through the concrete pipe, Sophie's breathing echoing in the confined space, Rivera's agents covering their retreat. They emerged behind a restaurant where the lunch rush provided cover. Rivera was already on her phone, calling for backup that might arrive too late. "They'll watch the airports, train stations, bus terminals," Sophie said, her mind working through the problem with medical precision. "They know I'm with FBI now, so they'll monitor all federal buildings." "Not all of them," Ethan said suddenly. "There's a decommissioned Air Force communications station in the mountains. Still federal property, but it's been empty for years. I did some contract work there last summer." Rivera looked skeptical. "How far?" 90 minutes if we take back roads. It's off the grid, defensible, and has old Cold War bunkers that are still intact." "That's not protocol. Protocol just tried to kill us," Sophie pointed out. They could hear sirens now, getting closer, but whether they were help or more danger was impossible to tell. Rivera made a decision that probably violated a dozen regulations. "Mr. Walker, can you get us there? I need to get Emma first." "Absolutely not. We can't involve a child. They already know about her." Ethan's voice carried the authority of someone who'd made life and death decisions at 30,000 feet. Her picture was in the social media post with Sophie. If they're thorough, and they seem to be, she's already a target. We get her, or I don't help you. Rivera looked like she wanted to argue, but another explosion from the direction of the apartment complex made the decision for her. "Fine, but we do this my way." 20 minutes later, Ethan stood in the principal's office at Emma's school, trying to explain why he needed to take his daughter out immediately without actually explaining anything. The principal, Mrs. Hadley, who'd known their family since before Sarah died, could see something was seriously wrong. "Ethan, what's really happening here? I can't explain, just trust me, please." She looked at him for a long moment, then called Emma's classroom. "Send Emma Walker to the office with all her belongings, please." Emma arrived confused but not scared, taking her father's tension as another adult mystery that would eventually make sense. She saw Sophie in Ethan's truck and brightened immediately. "Sophie, are we going on an adventure?" "Something like that, sweetheart," Sophie said, her voice remarkably calm. "Your dad's going to show us some mountains." As they drove out of Denver, following Rivera's SUV with 2 more federal vehicles behind them, Emma chattered about her day, blissfully unaware of the danger they were fleeing. Sophie held Ethan's phone, monitoring news sites and social media. The apartment complex was already trending. FBI raid gone wrong and shooting in Denver suburb, competing for clicks. "There," Sophie said quietly, showing Ethan a grainy security camera image. "That's Michael Torino, Vincent's son. He was there personally." "That's unusual. He doesn't get his hands dirty unless it's personal. I think he was the one who was supposed to harvest the boy's organs that day. When I refused, I didn't just cost them money. I embarrassed him." Emma had fallen asleep against Sophie's shoulder, trust evident in every relaxed muscle. Sophie stroked her hair absently, and Ethan caught Rivera watching them in the rearview mirror with an expression that might have been sympathy or calculation. The mountain road wound upward through pines and aspens, autumn gold against evergreen. The communication station appeared like a ghost from the Cold War, concrete buildings designed to survive nuclear war, antenna arrays reaching toward sky like metal prayers. "This is actually perfect," Rivera admitted, surveying the defensible position. One road in, clear sight lines, solid structures. They set up in the main building, which still had power thanks to solar panels Ethan had helped install. Emma woke up delighted by what looked like the world's best fort, unaware that it might need to be exactly that. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that reminded Ethan of Sarah's favorite sunset flights, Sophie stood beside him on the observation deck. "I've destroyed your life," she said quietly. "In 4 days, I've made you refugees from your own home. You saved a man on a plane. You refused to murder a child for money. You're testifying against monsters who literally harvest children. You didn't destroy anything. You just revealed what was already broken. Ethan, My wife died because I made a bad call in a storm. For 5 years, I've been so focused on not making another bad call that I stopped making any calls at all. Just existed day to day, keeping Emma safe, but not really living. Then you showed up, and suddenly I had to make choices again. Real choices with real consequences. And look where those choices led. To protecting someone worth protecting. To showing Emma that doing the right thing matters more than doing the safe thing. To feeling alive for the first time in 5 years. Sophie turned to face him fully, and in the fading light, he could see tears tracking down her cheeks. I can't stay after this. Even if we survive, even if they go to prison, I'll never be safe. I'll always be running. I know. Emma deserves better. You both do. Emma deserves to see that some things are worth fighting for, even if you can't keep them. Before Sophie could respond, Rivera appeared. We have a problem. Local police just reported finding Morrison's body. He's been dead for 2 days. But he called me yesterday, Sophie said. No. Someone using his phone called you. They've been tracking you this whole time, letting you think you were hidden while they positioned their resources. The implications settled over them like the mountain cold creeping in with nightfall. Every safe moment had been an illusion. Every day of peace had been granted by predators deciding when to strike. How long until they find us here? Ethan asked. Rivera checked her phone, calculating resources and distances. If they're smart, they're already on their way. Through the window, Emma could be seen inside, drawing at an old desk, creating another family portrait that would show 3 people who weren't supposed to be together, but somehow were. The sunset light caught her hair, making it glow like her mother's used to, and Ethan realized that sometimes the most dangerous thing wasn't the threat outside. Sometimes it was the hope inside that made you believe you could have something you were never meant to keep. The attack came at 3 a.m., not with the violence they expected, but with something worse: silence. The power went out first, solar panels somehow disconnected. Then the radio frequencies went dead, all of them, even the emergency channels that should have been inviolable. They were being isolated, cut off from the world with surgical precision. They're jamming everything, Rivera said, checking her equipment. Even satellite phones. This is military-grade tech. Ethan stood at the window, watching darkness where there should have been stars. Cloud cover had rolled in, thick and unnatural for the season. They're using weather modification. We did this in Afghanistan. Create cloud cover to mask heat signatures from surveillance. Your military background is showing, Sophie said quietly. Good. We're going to need it. Emma slept on an old cot in the corner, clutching Mr. Buttons, unaware that the adults around her were calculating survival odds that kept getting worse. Sophie had barely left her side, as if proximity could somehow shield the child from what was coming. I should go, Sophie said suddenly. If I leave now, maybe they'll follow me, leave you alone. That's not how this works, Rivera said. They don't leave witnesses, any witnesses. The first shot came through the window at 3:17 a.m., a sniper's bullet that would have taken Rivera's head off if she hadn't bent to check her weapon at exactly the right moment. The glass exploded inward, and everyone hit the floor, Ethan throwing himself over Emma, who woke screaming. Daddy! It's okay, baby. We're playing a game. Remember the earthquake drills at school? Just like that. More shots followed, systematic, probing their defenses. Not trying to kill, not yet. Just letting them know they were surrounded, outgunned, with nowhere to run. Rivera's radio crackled. Somehow one frequency had broken through. This is Vincent Torino. I'd like to speak with Dr. Chen. Sophie reached for the radio, but Ethan caught her hand. Don't. If I don't, they'll kill all of you. They'll kill us anyway. Sophie looked at Emma, trembling in her father's arms, and made a decision that broke something inside her. She took the radio. This is Sophie Chen. Doctor. Vincent's voice was cultured, calm, like they were discussing a business transaction. You've caused me considerable inconvenience. You murdered a child. I harvested organs from a brain-dead patient whose parents had already agreed to donation. You interfered with a medical procedure. He was conscious. I have the recording. Ah, yes, the recording. That's what we need to discuss. You give us the recording and yourself, and your friends live. Simple transaction. I don't believe you. I'm a businessman, doctor. Killing federal agents brings unwanted attention. Killing civilians, especially children, brings even more. But you, You're already dead. You just haven't accepted it yet. Emma whimpered, and Sophie's resolve crystallized. 1 hour? I need 1 hour to convince them to let me go. 30 minutes, then we come in. The radio went dead. Rivera immediately began arguing. We don't negotiate with... You're outgunned, jammed, and isolated, Sophie interrupted. How many rounds do you have? How long can you hold this position? And when they come, who's going to shield Emma? Sophie, no, Ethan said. But she was already moving, gathering her things with the same precision she'd used in the emergency room. I've been running for 6 months, she said. Marcus is dead. Morrison is dead. Everyone who tries to protect me ends up dead. But maybe if I give them what they want, you get to live. That's not living, Ethan said. That's just surviving. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that has to be enough. She knelt beside Emma, who was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Hey, sweetheart, remember what I promised? That I wouldn't disappear without saying goodbye? Emma nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Well, I have to go now, but I want you to know something. These last few days with you and your dad, they've been the best days I've had in a very long time. Why do you have to go? Because sometimes protecting the people we love means leaving them. Your mom knew that. She would have done anything to stay with you, but sometimes the world doesn't give us that choice. She pulled something from her bag, a small origami crane she'd made from a medical form during one of their quiet evenings. This is for you. In Japan, they believe if you make 1,000 of these, you get a wish. How many is this? Just one, but sometimes one is enough if you wish hard enough. Emma threw her arms around Sophie's neck, holding on like she could anchor her there through sheer force of will. I wish you could stay. Me too, baby, me too. Sophie stood, avoiding Ethan's eyes because looking at him would break her resolve. But he stepped in front of her, blocking her path to the door. Don't do this. I have to. No, you don't. We can fight. We can... What? Get Emma killed in a shootout? Make her an orphan? You've already lost one person you love to bad weather and worse decisions. Don't make Emma lose you too. The words were calculated to hurt, to make him angry enough to let her go. But Ethan saw through it, saw the fear and determination and something else. Something that looked dangerously like love. Sophie, I'm not Sarah, she said quietly. I'm not going to be another ghost in Emma's drawings. I'm going to be the woman who left to keep her safe. That's better. That has to be better. She kissed him then, soft and sad and final. Take care of her. Take care of each other. Rivera tried one more time. If you go out there, you're dead. I've been dead since I refused to harvest that boy's organs. This is just making it official. She checked her phone one last time, did something with the encrypted folder that made it flash green. There. The recording is uploaded to 12 different cloud servers, scheduled to release in 48 hours unless I stop it. My insurance policy. She walked to the door, each step measured and deliberate. At the threshold, she turned back one more time. Emma had buried her face in Ethan's chest, unable to watch. But Ethan watched. Someone should witness her bravery, even if it looked like surrender. Tell Emma her mom would be proud of the person she's becoming, Sophie said. Tell her the eggs were just the beginning. There was so much more I wanted to teach her. Then she was gone, walking into the darkness beyond the door. They watched through the window as she moved across the compound, hands raised toward the shadows where death waited with patient certainty. The figures that emerged were professional, organized. They surrounded Sophie quickly, efficiently, and she disappeared into a black SUV that had been invisible in the darkness. The convoy of vehicles pulled away, leaving only silence and the bitter taste of survival that felt like failure. They're gone, Rivera said, checking her equipment. Jamming's lifted. I'm calling for backup and medical. But Ethan wasn't listening. He was holding Emma, who sobbed with the abandon of a child who just learned that sometimes love wasn't enough, that sometimes good people left and didn't come back, that sometimes the world took away the things you needed most. Why did she go, Daddy? Why did she leave us? To keep us safe, baby. But we were supposed to keep her safe. I know. Rivera was on her radio, coordinating response teams, but she paused to look at them. She was brave. What she did, it took incredible courage. Courage. Ethan repeated, the word ash in his mouth. Is that what we call it when someone sacrifices themselves because we couldn't protect them? Sometimes, Rivera said quietly. That's exactly what we call it. The sun rose slowly over the mountains, painting the world in shades of gold that seemed to mock their grief. Somewhere out there, Sophie was facing whatever the Torinos had planned. Somewhere out there, she was alone again, carrying the weight of everyone she'd tried to protect. Emma finally cried herself to sleep, exhausted by grief. Ethan carried her to the cot, covered her with his jacket, and stood guard. Because that's what you did when you'd failed to protect someone. You protected whoever was left, even if it felt like trying to hold water in cupped hands. Rivera's phone buzzed. She answered, her face cycling through surprise, confusion, and then something that might have been hope. They found the convoy, she said. Abandoned, 3 miles from here. No sign of Sophie or the Torinos. What does that mean? It means she's either dead and disposed of, or... Rivera paused, thinking. Or she had a plan we didn't know about. Ethan thought about Sophie's final moments, the way she'd uploaded the recording, the calm in her voice when she'd negotiated for time. She was a doctor, trained to think under pressure, to make life and death decisions with incomplete information. She's not dead, he said with sudden certainty. She's running. How do you know? Because she promised Emma she'd say goodbye, and she keeps her promises. Outside, the morning light grew stronger, burning away the artificial clouds, revealing a sky that stretched endlessly in all directions. Somewhere under that sky, Sophie Chen was still fighting, still surviving, still keeping her promise in the only way she could. And in a small corner of a Cold War bunker, a father held his daughter and an origami crane, waiting for a miracle they weren't sure they deserved, but desperately needed to believe in. The video arrived 18 hours after Sophie disappeared, not to the FBI, not to the police, but to Emma's tablet, hidden inside a game update notification that only an 8-year-old would click without suspicion. Daddy! Emma ran into the kitchen where Ethan sat with Rivera, reviewing useless surveillance footage. Sophie sent me something. Rivera lunged for the tablet, but Ethan got there first, recognizing something in his daughter's voice, not fear, but wonder. The video showed Sophie, very much alive, sitting in what looked like a veterinary clinic. Behind her, medical supplies lined shelves, and a golden retriever slept on an examination table. She looked exhausted but unharmed, and she was smiling. Emma, sweetheart, if you're watching this, it means my friend Dr. Patel got this to you safely. I'm okay. I'm hiding, but I'm okay. She held up the origami crane Emma had seen her make. Remember when I said one crane might be enough if you wish hard enough? Well, I wish too. The video continued, but now Sophie looked directly at the camera with the intensity of someone delivering critical intelligence. Ethan, Rivera, I know you're watching. The Torinos made a mistake. They sent Michael to personally handle my execution. Vincent's son, the heir to everything, came himself, and I have him. Rivera grabbed the tablet, rewinding. That's impossible. But Sophie continued explaining, and the impossible became ingenious. She'd suspected the Torinos would come for her eventually, so she'd prepared. The upload to cloud servers wasn't just the recording. It was a dead man's switch connected to every major news outlet, FBI database, and social media platform. If she didn't check in every 12 hours, everything would release automatically. But that wasn't enough, Sophie's recorded voice continued. So when they took me, I did what I do best. I acted like a doctor. Michael Torino is diabetic, type 1, insulin dependent. His arrogance made him come without his medical supplies, assuming this would be quick. When his blood sugar crashed in the car, his men panicked. They actually let me treat him. The video shifted, showing a young man unconscious on a medical table, hooked to an IV. Michael Torino, heir to a criminal empire, completely vulnerable. I stabilized him, then negotiated. His life for my freedom. His men couldn't risk letting him die. So they made a deal. They get him back when I'm safe. Real safety, not just promises. Rivera was already on her phone, barking orders, but Ethan focused on the rest of Sophie's message. Emma, honey, I need you to do something for me. Remember the treasure hunts your daddy makes for your birthday? I made one for you. Check page 47 of Charlotte's Web, the one we were reading together. Emma ran to get the book, finding a folded paper tucked inside. It was a map, hand-drawn, showing their apartment complex and marking an X near the maintenance shed. "That's my spot," Emma said, "where I buried Hermione." Hermione had been her hamster, given a funeral with full honors 2 years ago. They drove back to Denver, the apartment complex still wrapped in crime scene tape but largely abandoned. The reporters had moved on to fresher tragedies. Ethan dug carefully while Emma supervised, and at 18 inches, his shovel hit metal. A lockbox, weatherproof and sealed. Inside were 3 things: a flash drive, $10,000 in cash, and a letter in Sophie's handwriting. "If you're reading this," Ethan read aloud, "it means I trusted the right people. The flash drive contains everything, not just the recording, but 18 months of investigation, financial records, phone taps, an entire map of their operation. I couldn't trust anyone with it before, but I trust you now." Rivera took the flash drive with hands that shook slightly. This is enough to destroy them, not just the Torinos, but their entire network." But Emma had found another note, this one addressed just to her. She read it silently, then handed it to her father. "My brave Emma, you asked me once if I was scared. I am. But you taught me something important. Being scared is okay, as long as you don't let it be the boss of you. So I'm not letting it be my boss anymore. I'm fighting back. Love, your friend Sophie. P.S. Your daddy looks at you the way my father used to look at me, like you're the whole world. You are. Never forget that." Ethan's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. "Ethan?" Sophie's voice, tired but real. "Is Emma there?" "Sophie." Emma grabbed the phone. "You're okay. You're really okay." "I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm sorry I had to leave like that." "Are you coming back?" Silence stretched across the connection. Then, "I don't know, but I need you to know something. You and your daddy gave me something I'd lost. Hope. The belief that there are still good people worth fighting for." Rivera took the phone. "Dr. Chen, where is Michael Torino?" "Safe. Sedated, but safe. He'll be released once you confirm his father, and the top lieutenants are in custody. I sent you the location of their main facility in Colorado. They're meeting tonight to discuss damage control. You'll never get a better chance." "Sophie," Ethan said, "where are you?" "Somewhere safe, somewhere they'll never think to look." A pause. "I'm at a veterinary clinic in Wyoming. Dr. Patel is an old friend from medical school. Turns out vets make excellent emergency physicians. They're used to patients who can't tell them what's wrong. We can protect you now. With this evidence, the evidence protects itself. That's why I set it up this way. But, Ethan, I meant what I said. I've put you and Emma through enough." "That's not your decision alone," Ethan said firmly. "Emma and I get a vote too." "I vote you come home," Emma said immediately. "Daddy votes that too, right, Daddy?" "Right." Another silence, then Sophie laughed, soft and surprised. "You don't even know me, not really." "We know enough," Ethan said. "We know you save lives even when your own is in danger. We know you keep promises. We know you make really good eggs." "The eggs were pretty good," Emma added seriously. "Sophie," Rivera interrupted, "I'm mobilizing teams now. We'll have the Torinos in custody within hours, but we need you to testify, your physical testimony, not just the recordings." "I know. Will you come in?" Ethan could hear her breathing, could picture her standing in some backcountry vet clinic, weighing safety against justice, survival against truth. 20 years ago, Sophie said finally. "My little sister needed a kidney transplant. We couldn't afford it. She died waiting on a list while rich people bought organs from criminals like the Torinos. I became a doctor because of her, and I refused to harvest that boy's organs because of her. Everything I've done has been because somewhere there's another little girl whose family can't afford to buy her way to the front of the line. Sophie, I'll testify, but I have conditions. Full immunity, witness protection for Ethan and Emma if needed, and the money from the Torino assets goes to organ donation advocacy, non-negotiable." "I can make that happen," Rivera said. "Then I'll see you in 72 hours, after you have them in custody, after it's safe." "Sophie, wait," Emma said. "Will you teach me to make those eggs?" Through the phone, they could hear Sophie crying. "Yeah, sweetheart, I'll teach you. It's all about the temperature and timing, and having people you care about to share them with." After she hung up, They stood in the parking lot of their damaged home, holding evidence that would topple a criminal empire. Emma clutched her origami crane. Ethan held his daughter, and Rivera held the future of dozens of cases in her hand. She played them, Rivera said, with something approaching awe. She let them think they had her, but she was 3 steps ahead the whole time. She's a doctor, Ethan said simply. She's trained to think under pressure. That night, the FBI raids happened simultaneously across 3 states. Vincent Torino was arrested at his compound in Aspen. Michael was recovered from a veterinary clinic in Wyoming, unharmed but humiliated. 18 members of their organization were taken into custody with evidence so overwhelming that bail was denied for all of them. Sophie's recordings played on every major news network. The boy on the table was identified, a runaway from Iowa whose family had been told he died in an accident. He was actually alive, having survived despite the attempted harvesting, hidden by Sophie's intervention and the chaos that followed. 3 days later, Sophie walked into the federal courthouse in Denver. She wore a simple black suit and the kind of exhausted dignity that comes from fighting longer than you thought you could. Ethan and Emma waited in the witness room, not allowed in the actual testimony, but refusing to be anywhere else. "You came back," Emma said when Sophie emerged 8 hours later, looking drained but victorious. "I promised, didn't I?" "Besides," Sophie smiled, pulling Emma into a hug. "Someone needs to teach you about eggs." The trial would take months. The Torinos would hire the best lawyers money could buy. There would be threats, attempts at jury tampering, media circuses. But Sophie had given them something unbreakable: truth backed by evidence, courage backed by conviction, and the kind of testimony that came from someone who'd already survived the worst they could do. Standing in the courthouse lobby, Emma between them, Ethan and Sophie looked at each other over her head. Not a family, not yet. Maybe not ever. But something worth protecting, something worth fighting for. "So," Ethan said, "want to get some eggs?" Sophie laughed, and for the first time since this all began, it reached her eyes. "I know just the place, but I'm cooking." Imboisi. The call came at 2 a.m., 6 weeks after Sophie's testimony had put Vincent Torino behind bars awaiting trial. Ethan woke to his phone vibrating against the nightstand, the caller ID showing Rivera's number. "They escaped," Rivera said without preamble. "Vincent and Michael, during a medical transfer. 3 guards dead, 2 critically injured." Ethan was already out of bed, muscle memory from military days taking over. "How long ago?" 4 hours. We've been trying to locate them, but they're coming for Sophie. We have units heading to her safe house now." "What safe house?" Ethan hadn't been told where Sophie was relocated after the trial began, for everyone's safety. She'd called Emma twice a week, virtual bedtime stories that had become the highlight of his daughter's days, but the location was always carefully hidden. "I can't." "Rivera, they'll find her. They found Morrison in witness protection. They have resources we can't imagine. Where is she?" A pause then. "Fort Collins, 4847 Mountain View Drive. She's got 2 agents with her." Ethan was already pulling on clothes, calculating distances. Fort Collins was 90 minutes in normal traffic, maybe 60 if he pushed it. "I'm going." "Absolutely not. This is federal." "She saved my daughter's life by leaving. I'm going to save hers by showing up." He hung up before Rivera could argue, then stood in Emma's doorway for a moment, watching her sleep. She'd drawn a new family picture yesterday, 3 figures holding hands under a rainbow. Sophie was part of their story now, whether she was present or not. He called Mrs. Patterson next door, the elderly widow who'd become Emma's unofficial grandmother. She answered on the second ring, alert despite the hour. "Ethan? What's wrong?" "I need you to watch Emma, please. It's an emergency." "I'll be right there." 3 minutes later, she was at the door in her robe and slippers, carrying her knitting and her late husband's service revolver. "Go," she said simply. "Do what you need to do." The drive to Fort Collins felt both endless and too quick. Ethan's truck ate up the dark highway while his mind ran through scenarios, none of them good. The Torinos had killed federal agents to escape. They wouldn't hesitate to kill more to get to Sophie. His phone rang. Sophie. "Ethan?" Her voice was controlled, but he could hear fear underneath. "How did you—" Rivera called. "Are you okay?" For now, The agents are doing perimeter checks every 15 minutes, but something feels wrong. There's a van that's been parked down the street for... The sound of breaking glass cut her off, followed by shouting and the distinctive pop of suppressed gunfire. "Sophie! They're here! Oh God, they're..." The line went dead. Ethan pressed the accelerator to the floor, his truck's engine screaming protest, as the speedometer climbed past 90. He was still 20 minutes out. 20 minutes that Sophie might not have. He called Rivera. "They're at the safe house. Sophie's in trouble. Units are 8 minutes out. She doesn't have 8 minutes." The safe house was a suburban ranch, chosen for its normalcy. But normal meant no real defenses, no fallback positions, no way to hold off a determined assault. Ethan pulled up to find the front door hanging off its hinges. One federal agent down in the driveway, the other nowhere to be seen. He moved tactically, skills from Afghanistan flooding back. The house was quiet, too quiet. Blood on the entryway floor, still wet. Furniture overturned in the living room, signs of a fight that had moved deeper into the house. "Sophie," he called softly, a muffled sound from the back of the house. He moved toward it, checking corners, watching shadows. The bathroom door was locked from the inside. "Sophie, it's me." The lock turned, and Sophie stumbled out, blood running from a gash on her forehead. "They took Agent Martinez. Agent Davis is..." She gestured toward the kitchen, where Ethan could see legs extending past the island, unmoving. "Where are they now?" "Michael's hit. Vincent took him to the garage. They're trying to stop the bleeding, but..." She grabbed his arm. "Ethan, you shouldn't be here. They'll kill you." "They'll kill you first." He checked the window. 2 vehicles in the driveway, the van and a black SUV. "How many?" "4, maybe 5. Vincent, Michael, and at least 2 others." "Michael's wounded?" "I hit him with Davis's backup piece. Center mass. He's bleeding badly." Ethan felt a cold smile cross his face. Then Vincent has a choice to make. Save his son or finish his revenge. He'll choose revenge. He's lost everything else. No, he'll choose his son. That's why this all started. Family, legacy, the empire he built for Michael to inherit. We can use that. Sirens in the distance, getting closer. Vincent would hear them too, would know his window was closing. Ethan made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone who hadn't spent years making split-second choices at 30,000 feet. "Stay here," he told Sophie, then walked openly into the garage. Vincent Torino stood over his son, pressing a blood-soaked towel to Michael's abdomen. 2 other men had weapons trained on Ethan immediately, but Vincent raised a hand, stopping them. "Mr. Walker, the mechanic who thinks he's a hero. The father who knows what it's like to lose family," Ethan corrected. "Your son's dying. Gut shot, probably hit the liver. He's got maybe 10 minutes without proper medical attention." "We have a doctor," Vincent said, but his eyes betrayed the lie. "You have Sophie, the woman you came to kill, but she's also the only person here who can save Michael." Ethan let that sink in. "Those sirens? That's FBI and paramedics. 3 minutes out, maybe 4. Michael doesn't have that long." Michael groaned, blood bubbling from his lips. Internal bleeding, getting worse. "What are you proposing?" Vincent asked. "Sophie saves Michael. You leave. Everyone lives." "She testified against us, destroyed everything we built. Because you murdered children, but right now, your child is dying. So what matters more, revenge or family?" Vincent looked at his son, pale and fading, then at Ethan. "Bring her. No weapons on her. She treats him, you leave, nobody else dies. You trust me to keep that deal?" "I trust you to love your son more than you hate her." It was a gamble, but Ethan had learned to read people in cockpits where hesitation meant death. Vincent was a monster, but he was also a father watching his child die. Sophie came without hesitation when Ethan explained, her doctor's instincts overriding everything else. She knelt beside Michael, hands moving with practiced efficiency, checking the wound, assessing damage. "Exit wound?" "No," one of Vincent's men answered. "Then the bullet's still in there. He needs surgery immediately." She looked at Vincent. "I can stabilize him, slow the bleeding, but he needs an OR." "Do it." Sophie worked with the same focus she'd had on the plane that first day, saving lives even when it put her own at risk. She used Vincent's own belt as a tourniquet, packed the wound with gauze from the FBI medical kit. started an IV with supplies from the kitchen. His pressure's dropping, she said. He needs blood. We're the same type, Vincent said. O negative. Then roll up your sleeve. The surreal scene unfolded, Sophie performing field medicine while setting up a direct transfusion between father and son. Vincent's blood literally flowing into Michael as sirens grew louder. 60 seconds, Ethan warned. You need to go. Vincent stood, wobbly from blood loss, but determined. His men lifted Michael carefully, Sophie talking them through how to maintain pressure without causing more damage. This isn't over, Vincent told Sophie. Yes, it is, she replied, not looking up from Michael. You're going to run. You're going to hide. You're going to spend every day looking over your shoulder, wondering when they'll find you. The Empire's gone, Vincent. All you have left is Michael. Make that enough. Vincent stared at her for a long moment, then nodded to his men. They carried Michael to the SUV, Vincent following, weaker but walking. As they pulled away, FBI vehicles screeched into the driveway from the other direction. Rivera jumped out, weapon drawn. Where are they? Gone, Ethan said simply. 3 minutes ahead of you, probably less. Which direction? Sophie looked at Ethan, a silent conversation passing between them. North, she said. They went north. The SUV had actually gone west, toward the mountains and whatever escape route Vincent had prepared. Rivera organized pursuit northward, helicopters scrambling, roadblocks being set. You let them go, Rivera said, not quite accusing. I saved lives, Sophie replied. All of them. That's what I do. The safe house became a crime scene, tape, and technicians and questions that went on for hours. But eventually, as dawn painted the mountains pink and gold, Sophie and Ethan found themselves alone on the back porch, wrapped in FBI blankets, drinking terrible coffee. He'll come back, Sophie said quietly. Vincent, when Michael's stable, he'll come back. No, he won't. He's lost everything except his son. He won't risk that. You gave him a choice between revenge and Michael's life. He chose his son. That choice will define everything he does now. You sound very sure. I lost my wife because I chose the mission over safety. I've spent 5 years living with that choice. Vincent will spend the rest of his life knowing his son lives because the woman he hated most saved him. That's a special kind of prison. Sophie leaned against him, exhaustion finally winning. Emma's going to be angry we had an adventure without her. Emma's going to be thrilled you're coming home. Home, Sophie tested the word. I don't have one anymore. The safe house is compromised. My apartment in Chicago is gone. Everything I owned is in storage or evidence. You have us, Ethan said simply. If you want us. Ethan, I'm a mess. I'm in witness protection. I have PTSD. I wake up screaming. I check locks obsessively. I see threats everywhere. I'm a widower with survivor's guilt, raising a daughter who draws her dead mother with angel wings. I have nightmares about plane crashes. I haven't been on a date in 5 years. We're all messes, Sophie. The question is whether we want to be messes together or alone. She turned to look at him, this man who'd driven 90 miles an hour to save her, who'd faced down killers with nothing but words and paternal understanding. Emma needs stability. Emma needs truth. And the truth is, you're already part of our family. You have been since you taught her to make eggs. That's a lot to build on eggs. We've built on less. We've built on loss and fear, and the hope that tomorrow might be better than today. Eggs are practically a solid foundation compared to that. Sophie laughed, soft and surprised. You know what's crazy? I became a doctor to save lives, but saving Michael tonight felt more important than all the others, because it wasn't about being good or evil. It was about recognizing that even monsters love their children. That's not crazy, that's human. Rivera appeared in the doorway. We found them. Sophie tensed, but Rivera continued. Border Patrol. They crossed into Canada 2 hours ago. Michael was admitted to a hospital in Calgary under assumed names. He's in surgery but expected to survive. Are you going after them? That's complicated. International jurisdiction, diplomatic concerns. It could take months to extradite them, if Canada even agrees. Rivera studied Sophie carefully. You don't seem upset. I'm alive. Ethan's alive. Emma's safe. The rest is just paperwork. Rivera's phone buzzed. She answered, her expression shifting to something between disbelief and admiration. Vincent Torino just released a statement through his lawyer. Full confession to all charges. implicating everyone in the organization except Michael. He's taking sole responsibility in exchange for his son's immunity. He's protecting Michael, Sophie said quietly, giving him a chance at a different life. Michael's not innocent. No, but he's young enough to change, if he chooses to. His father's giving him that choice. Rivera left to coordinate the international mess this had become. Sophie and Ethan sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher, burning off the morning mist. Somewhere in Canada, a father was trading his freedom for his son's future. Somewhere in Denver, a little girl was waking up, probably demanding to know where her daddy had gone. "We should go home," Ethan said. "I don't know where that is anymore." "Sure you do. It's where Emma is, where the good eggs are, where you have a half-finished origami crane collection because someone believes in wishes." Sophie's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She opened it cautiously, then showed it to Ethan. It was a photo of Michael in a hospital bed, unconscious but stable. The message read, "She saved him. Debt acknowledged. VT." "Is that a threat or a thank you?" Ethan asked. "Both. Neither. It's an ending." Sophie deleted the message, the kind where everyone's alive to regret their choices. They drove back to Denver as the morning traffic built, two damaged people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances. The apartment was still wrapped in crime tape, but Mrs. Patterson's house smelled like pancakes and Emma's laughter. "Sophie!" Emma launched herself at the doctor, all knees and elbows and desperate 8-year-old affection. "Mrs. Patterson said you had an adventure. Without me. That's not fair." "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Next adventure, you're definitely invited." "Promise?" "I promise only safe adventures from now on." Emma considered this. "That sounds boring." "Boring sounds perfect," Sophie said, catching Ethan's eye over Emma's head. "Absolutely perfect." Mrs. Patterson, veteran of her own wars, simply set another place at the table. "Eggs?" she asked Sophie. "I'm teaching Emma my secret recipe. Want to learn?" And so, in a neighbor's kitchen, while crime scene tape fluttered in the morning breeze next door, Sophie Chen taught Emma Walker and Mrs. Patterson how to make perfect scrambled eggs. Ethan watched from the doorway, seeing not an ending, but a beginning. Not a family formed by design, but one forged by choice, tempered by trial, and somehow, impossibly, whole. The Torinos were done. The trial would proceed without them. The organ trafficking ring was dismantled. Justice, imperfect but real, had been served. And in a small kitchen in Denver, 4 people who'd learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing wasn't letting go, but holding on, shared breakfast and the quiet victory of survival. "These are good eggs," Mrs. Patterson declared. "The best," Emma agreed. Sophie smiled, her hand finding Ethan's under the table. "They're just eggs, but sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it was everything." 6 months later. The wedding was small, just family and close friends in the backyard of their new house in Wheat Ridge, a Denver suburb where nobody knew their story, and the neighbors minded their own business. Emma wore a purple dress with sequins that caught the September sunlight. Self-appointed flower girl and ring bearer and mistress of ceremonies all rolled into one determined 8-year-old package. "Do you, Sophie Chen, take my daddy to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Emma read from her handwritten notes, having insisted on officiating despite the actual judge standing right beside her. Sophie bit back a laugh. "I do." "And do you, Daddy, promise to let Sophie make the eggs from now on because hers are better?" "Emma," Ethan protested, but he was smiling. "Yes, I promise." "Then by the power invested in me by absolutely nobody, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss, but not too long, because that's gross." The small gathering erupted in laughter. Rivera was there, having become something between a friend and an overprotective aunt. Mrs. Patterson sat in the front row, tissues at the ready. Dr. Patel, the veterinarian who'd hidden Sophie during the darkest days, had driven down from Wyoming. Even Marcus's widow had come, finding comfort in Sophie's survival, where her husband hadn't been as fortunate. As Ethan kissed his new wife, Emma threw flower petals with excessive enthusiasm, most of them landing on the judge, who took it with good humor. This wasn't the wedding any of them had imagined, but it was perfect in its imperfection, beautiful in its hard-won simplicity. The reception was in their living room, spilling out onto the deck Ethan had built with his own hands over the spring. Sophie had officially started work at Denver General's emergency department, her reputation preceding her as the doctor who'd stood up to organ traffickers and lived to tell about it. Some colleagues treated her like a hero, others like a curiosity, but all respected her skill in the controlled chaos of the ER. "No regrets?" Rivera asked, finding Sophie during a quiet moment as the sun set behind the mountains. "About which part? Marrying a man I've known less than a year? Becoming an instant mother to a child who's already planning our family Halloween costume? Any of it. All of it." Sophie watched Ethan teaching Emma and 3 of her friends some kind of elaborate hand-clapping game that seemed to have no rules but infinite variations. Vincent Torino sent a wedding gift. Rivera's hand moved instinctively to where her service weapon would normally be. "What?" "Relax. It was a donation. $5 million to the Children's Organ Donation Fund, specifically earmarked for families who can't afford transplant care." Sophie showed her the anonymous donation receipt. "He's still in Canada. Michael's apparently enrolled in the pre-med at McGill University." "You're joking." "I'm not. I think saving Michael changed something. Not enough to excuse everything else, but enough to redirect what's left of their lives. That's insane. That's redemption, messy, incomplete, problematic redemption, but still." Emma ran over, grabbing Sophie's hand. "Mom, come dance." The words stopped everything. Mom. Not Sophie, not stepmother. Mom. Sophie looked at Ethan, who shrugged with affected casualness, despite the tears in his eyes. "She's been practicing in the mirror for a week. Wanted to surprise you." "Is it okay?" Emma asked, suddenly uncertain. "I can still call you Sophie if—" Sophie dropped to her knees, pulling Emma into a fierce hug. "Mom is perfect. It's absolutely perfect." They danced as the stars came out. 3 people who'd been broken in different ways, finding that their jagged edges somehow fit together. The music was from Emma's playlist, which meant it was mostly songs from animated movies, but nobody cared. Mrs. Patterson taught Rivera to swing dance. Dr. Patel told embarrassing stories about Sophie in medical school. The night filled with the kind of laughter that comes after sorrow, deeper and more precious for having been earned. Later, after the guests had gone, and Emma had crashed in a sugar-induced coma on the couch, Ethan and Sophie stood in their kitchen, not his or hers, but theirs, washing dishes in comfortable domesticity. "I have something to tell you," Sophie said quietly. Ethan's hands stilled in the soapy water. They'd learned to pay attention to each other's quiet announcements, to the weight certain words carried. "I'm pregnant." The plate Ethan was holding slipped back into the water with a splash. When did you?" 3 weeks ago, I suspected. Confirmed it yesterday. I wanted to wait until after the wedding to tell you, in case it changed things." "Changed things?" Ethan turned to face her fully, soapsud still clinging to his hands. "Sophie, the only thing this changes is Emma's going to be insufferable about being a big sister." "You're not scared?" "Terrified. But I've been terrified since the day you walked into our lives, and that's worked out pretty well." Sophie laughed, leaning into him. "We're really doing this, the whole family thing, after everything? Because of everything. We've already survived the worst. FBI raids, organized crime, witness protection, Emma's school play where she forgot all her lines, but made up new ones about dragons. A baby seems almost peaceful in comparison. You've never had a newborn and an 8-year-old at the same time. You've never seen me function on no sleep, Air Force training, remember? I once flew a 16-hour mission on nothing but coffee and spite. They told Emma the next morning over breakfast. Sophie's famous eggs, of course. Her reaction was to immediately begin planning the baby's entire life, including what sports they'd play, soccer, what instrument they'd learn, drums, to Ethan's horror, and what their favorite color would be, purple, obviously. "Can we name it Hermione if it's a girl?" Emma asked through a mouthful of toast. "That was your hamster's name," Ethan pointed out. "Exactly. It's a family name." The months that followed were a blur of ordinary miracles. Sophie's testimony had led to 43 convictions across 6 states. The organ trafficking ring was dismantled so thoroughly that it became a case study at Quantico. She received letters from families whose children were alive because of her courage, which she kept in a box marked, "Remember Why." Ethan returned to flying, not military aircraft, but medical helicopters, combining his skills with a new purpose. He'd wake early for flights, and Sophie would pack him lunch with notes that said things like, "Don't be a hero," and "Come home safe." And once, memorably, "The eggs are better when you're here to eat them." Emma thrived in the stability of their chaotic love. Her drawings still included her birth mother, but now Sarah had company. Sophie, Ethan, Emma, and a blob labeled baby that looked more like a potato, with eyes but was perfect in its imperfection. The baby came early because of course she did. Sophie's water broke in the middle of Emma's school concert, and Ethan broke every traffic law getting to the hospital, while Emma provided commentary from the back seat about how this was way more exciting than her solo. Grace Sarah Walker was born at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, screaming with the kind of indignation that suggested she'd inherited her mother's fighting spirit and her father's determination. Emma took one look at her and declared, "She's wrinkly, but I love her." Rivera visited the next day, bringing an enormous teddy bear and classified news. Vincent Torino died yesterday, heart attack in Toronto. Michael was with him. Sophie, holding Grace while Emma helped by narrating everything the baby did, processed this information. "How's Michael?" He sent a letter. To you." Rivera pulled out an envelope, already opened and cleared by security. The letter was brief. "Dr. Chen, my father died peacefully, which is more than he deserved, but what you gave him. He spoke of you often in these last months, not with anger, but with something approaching respect. You saved my life twice, once in that garage, and once by showing my father that even enemies can choose mercy. I graduate from McGill next year. I've been accepted to several surgical residencies. I plan to specialize in pediatric organ donation. The debt is paid. Live well. MT." Sophie handed the letter to Ethan, who read it with the expression of someone trying to solve a complex equation. "He's becoming a doctor?" "Apparently. To do organ donation?" "Seems like it. That's complicated, ironic, hopeful. All of the above." Emma, who'd been listening with the selective attention of 9-year-olds, said, "Maybe he's trying to be good now. People can change, right? Like how Sophie changed from running away to running toward us." Out of the mouths of babes. 2 years passed. Grace learned to walk, then run, chasing Emma, who'd appointed herself chief entertainer and assistant parent. Sophie was promoted to head of emergency medicine. Ethan became lead pilot for the medical fleet. They bought a bigger house with a yard where Emma could practice soccer and Grace could eat dirt when nobody was looking. The nightmares faded but never fully disappeared. Sophie still checked locks obsessively. Ethan still woke some nights thinking he heard Sarah calling. Emma still drew pictures of angels. But these shadows made the light moments brighter, made ordinary Tuesday dinners feel like celebrations of survival. On the 3rd anniversary of the day Sophie walked into their lives, they returned to the airport where it all began. Not to fly anywhere, just to watch planes take off and remember. "Look, Grace," Emma pointed at a medical helicopter. "That's like what Daddy flies." Grace, now talking in 2-word sentences that usually involved "want cookie," clapped enthusiastically at everything her sister showed her. Sophie leaned against Ethan as they watched their daughters discover the magic of flight. "Did you ever think we'd end up here? Here specifically? Watching our kids get sticky fingerprints on airport windows? No. Here generally, happy, safe, together. I hoped. When you were making eggs that first night, when Emma laughed for the first time in months, I hoped. Hope's a dangerous thing. Hope's the only thing. It's what makes us try again after loss, love again after grief, trust again after betrayal." A small plane took off, wobbling slightly in the crosswind before finding its balance and climbing toward clouds that looked like cotton candy in the sunset light. Grace pointed and said her new favorite word. "Wow." "Wow indeed," Sophie agreed. Emma, ever the philosopher at 11, said, "You know what's weird? If bad things hadn't happened, the good things couldn't have happened either. Like, if Mom hadn't died, Dad wouldn't have been sad. And if Dad wasn't sad, he wouldn't have been on that plane. And if he wasn't on that plane, he wouldn't have met Sophie. And if he hadn't met Sophie, we wouldn't have Grace. It's like everything bad that happened was actually leading to something good." That's a very mature way to look at it, Sophie said. Also, the eggs would still be terrible, Emma added, making them all laugh. As they walked back to their car, Grace on Ethan's shoulders and Emma holding Sophie's hand, they passed a memorial wall honoring fallen officers and agents. Marcus Rodriguez's name was there, along with the agents who died protecting Sophie. They paused, as they always did, for a moment of silent gratitude. They'd be proud, Rivera had told them once. Knowing their sacrifice meant something, that it led to this. This. A patchwork family built from loss and hope, held together by scrambled eggs and stubborn love. Proof that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the most broken ground. Home? Ethan asked. Home, Sophie agreed. Emma started singing a song she'd made up about dragons who ate eggs for dinner. Grace joined in with enthusiastic babbling. And as they drove away from the airport toward their imperfect, chaotic, wonderful life, Sophie thought about the origami crane still sitting on their mantel. The first of what had become 1,000, because Emma had decided they needed all the wishes they could get. But watching her family, this accidental, intentional, chosen family, Sophie realized they'd already gotten their wish. It just hadn't looked anything like what they'd expected. It looked better. It looked like home. The end.